In the name of the living God, blessed Trinity, and lover of your souls. Amen. What do you want? What do you want? It's not an unusual question. We ask it with a serving spoon raised of a hungry belly standing in the buffet line. We ask it with notepads in our hands of the children as holiday nears. We ask it in tones of opportunity and in tones of frustration. What do you want? Whether you're in an argument with someone or simply browsing the menu at a new restaurant, knowing what you want, or sometimes just saying what you know you want, can get complicated. Unless there is something so obvious, something so painful or so joyful happening right in the moment the question is asked, that you can think of wanting nothing but that one thing. In today's gospel lesson, Bartimaeus knows that one thing that he wants. We find him sitting on the side of the road leading out of Jericho. He hears Jesus walk by, and when he does, the Greek text tells us that he starts cawing like a crow, or at least that's what it sounded like to the crowd. Have mercy, have mercy. To liken those words to a crow's caw makes me think that some people found this man's request annoying or pathetic. The text also says the crowd kept hushing him, but their hushing only made his cries get louder because Bartimaeus knew what he wanted. When Jesus heard Bartimaeus crying out for mercy, he stopped in the middle of the road, stood still, and said to the crowds, "Let the man come to me." What do you want? What do you really want? Do you really want it? Do you want it enough to go against what everyone else is telling you you should do? Enough to annoy others? Enough to cry out for help? Few of us make it as far as Bartimaeus in naming what we want. It's risky. It's especially risky if you have a history of not being heard or of your desires being rejected. Can you recall a moment of courage in your own life where, like Bartimaeus, you waded through the crowds until you finally found someone who would listen, who would hear your true desire, hear your real need? The scriptures tell us that this man was so excited to hear that Jesus was calling for him, that Jesus was ready to hear his request, that he threw off his coat, he leapt up, and he rushed to Jesus. And that's when Jesus asks Bartimaeus his question. What do you want me to do for you? And I wonder if this was a jarring question for the crowd, if everyone there was puzzled. Jesus, don't you see the white stick and the sunglasses? This is Bartimaeus. We call him the blind beggar. Obviously, we know what he wants from you. But in Greek, this word is a generic kind of blindness. It is about not being able to see what's right in front of you. It's about physical blindness, but it's also about spiritual blindness. And the word makes me think that what Jesus and Bartimaeus saw happening that day was very different than what the crowds were seeing. Bartimaeus may have been physically blind, but I think he was the only one in the crowd actually seeing Jesus. And here's why. Have you ever experienced a tragedy and been asked this innocent but familiar question in the face of your grief or pain? What can I do to help? Maybe a family member died, or you just received the news of a terrifying diagnosis, and you look at the person asking the question, wondering how you'll find the strength to do that emotional work for them. Amidst your own numbness or anger, trying to figure out how you can help them figure out what they can do for you. In that moment of grief and pain, like Bartimaeus, I think we all know exactly what we want. The problem is that we also know the person talking to us likely can't give it to us. What we want in those moments is for that one terrible thing we're experiencing never to have happened in the first place. Please take it away. And if you can't fix that, well, then a casserole is just fine. Thank you very much. What do you want? And how often do you really name it? So few people are really listening, really wanting to hear what you want. Because all too often, what we want seems impossible for others to give. So we don't ask anymore. We keep it to ourselves, but that pain, that constriction locks us up inside. And that's why I know that Bartimaeus, the blind man, was the only one seeing Jesus. Why? Well, because he didn't ask Jesus for a casserole. Bartimaeus tells Jesus the impossible truth. What he wants is to see again, please. To see again. He could see, and now he can't. Something happened. Something happened that caused this change in sight, and since that event, he's been getting a lot of casseroles, but no one who will stop long enough to hear what he really wants. So I'll pause here because I want to talk to the church ladies and gents who are wondering if I'm telling you not to bake the casserole. I assure you, when we are grieving, we do want the scalloped potatoes. But what I'm trying to say is that we can find ourselves on both sides of this conversation of what do you want me to do for you, right? And the invitation in this gospel lesson is for all of us to be brave no matter which side of that question we're on. If you're a Bartimaeus today, and you know exactly what you want, what you need, but you're afraid to name it because you think no one can help, Bartimaeus invites you to be brave. There is someone who can help. And if you're the crowd aware of the cries of someone in the community, but you're afraid to listen because you think you can't help, Jesus invites you to be brave, to be the one who's willing to hear an impossible request. This conversation between Jesus and Bartimaeus models for the crowd in the gospel story and for us today exactly what a healthy, loving Christian conversation can look like. It shows us the layers of healing that can happen if we're willing to have the conversation. The Greek word used to describe Bartimaeus' request for sight literally reads, I want to receive sight. I want to receive sight. There's a physical layer to the request, but there's also a spiritual and social layer to this request. See, I don't think Bartimaeus was the only one healed in that conversation. Jesus stopped on the road to give an unseen man his full attention. One theological mind wrote, attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. Those crowds that passed by this man each day may have tossed him a few coins so that they didn't have to face his request for sight. But Jesus listened to his request, and in so doing, he was not only able to restore the man's sight, but the crowd's ability to see Bartimaeus. See, the crowds were defining this man by this one thing that happened to him, reducing him to a second-class citizen, an outsider, even from the crowd. But through Bartimaeus' honest request for mercy, Jesus was able to give everyone sight. He helped all of them see more clearly. By the end of the story, Bartimaeus is pictured with the crowds following Jesus. And at first glance, it might appear that Bartimaeus was finally restored to fellowship because of his healing. But I think the crowd was finally restored to fellowship with Bartimaeus in Jesus. Bartimaeus was the only one following Jesus in that story. When we can name our need with someone who will listen, our dignity is restored. Our need matters. And our dignity is restored not just to ourselves, but in the eyes of others. Their need matters. Yeah. And when we can receive someone's need without feeling the expectation that we are the one that has to satisfy it alone, we make space for someone else to meet the living God. So what do you want? What's your honest desire and need? What do you want Jesus to do for you?